Hi, Sagittarius Sun and Rising. Welcome to your June 2025 Astro Update. It's Raina here, fellow Sun in Sag for some of you, as well as Mercury in Sagittarius. So June is a month that our opposite sign, Gemini, is front and center, with the sun there. But that's not the only that's not the only planet that is in Gemini. Mercury is in Gemini as the month begins, and Jupiter, our ruler, is there. And two of the big pieces of news in June for Sagittarius is that Jupiter goes into a new sign. It goes into Cancer, and this is going to be for the next year, so that's very significant. And the other one is that we have a full moon in our sign. But I like to do things chronologically, so I'm going to start from the beginning. On the 6th of the month, Venus goes into Taurus. Taurus for Sagittarius is the 6th house, so it's a very practical area. Venus isn't really about practicality, is it? Venus is about love. Venus is about beauty. It's the aesthetics of things. It's about money, It rules the 2nd house. And so when it's in the 6th house, you can find pleasure. It's about, it can be about pleasure too. And you can find pleasure in activities and anything that relates to organizing things, because this is Virgo's domain in astrology. So this can be the perfect time to kind of organize your house, apartment, where, however you live, in a way that feels, or even like redecorate your environment. The 4th house is your home, but what I'm talking about is in terms of efficiency. So maybe something more like that. Like if you have a home office, maybe you want to kind of buy a new desk and something nice. Maybe it's not something you really need, but it's something that makes it more pleasant for you to enter. If you work in an office away from home, they may be painting it, redoing it in some way. They may be, you might get a raise when it's in this house of work. That's a possibility. Or you may fall in love with somebody that you meet on the job. On the 8th, Mercury goes into Cancer. So now we're talking about the 8th house, and this is a kind of a prelude to the things that are coming in that are connected to Cancer energy for this time period, but also Jupiter going into Cancer. And by the way, we did have Mars spending a lot of time in Cancer over the winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And this kind of created a lot of activity, or maybe even conflict, in the area of shared resources. So there might have been something with a will, or, preparing for that kind of thing. And there may have been like a little bit of antagonism associated with that. And Jupiter is going to be much more pleasant because it's a benefic planet. It's the biggest planet, so it wields a lot of influence. And it just is going to be very benign in the 8th house. And so that will happen the day afterwards, on the 9th of the month, that Jupiter goes into Cancer. So with these two planets, for instance, Mercury, you could be discussing things that are connected to other people's money, or maybe there's a contract that you need to sign, get a will, created, or there's something going on with a will that you need to read, and paperwork. And Jupiter here is going to bless this area of your life for the next year. It's going to expand it. It could be lucky, but it could be just that it's very emphasized. Okay. And besides wills, I mean, it could be a divorce. It could be some kind of stock dividends or anything that you have put money into, insurance payouts and the like. Maybe your partner, your mate gets a really nice bonus, or they get a raise, or they get an inheritance. On the 11th, we have a full moon at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. So if your sun or ascendant is around that degree, that will be felt even more so. And this is about issues related to, this is, the first house. But, some people, if your rising sign is 24 degrees of Sagittarius, this will actually fall in your 12th house, and it will have a different effect. But I think even for those people that falls in the 12th house, it can still have this similar type of energy, because first of all, you're connected to the energy of Sagittarius, regardless of what degree you are. And so even if it falls in your 12th house, it's more of the unconscious things that you need to let go of, or some people say it's the subconscious mind. I think it's more unconscious. It might even be because 12th house can be past lives, so very, forgotten types of things. But it can be this idea of, I need to let go of certain things in order to move forward, in order to bring in fresh energy, because the 12th house is the last house. So it's kind of like closure, tying up loose ends for one cycle of life. And so you can start another one. So for those people that this is falling into the first house, this is more on the conscious level. And it could be, the first house is your body. So it could be like, I want to do certain things. I want to let go of certain things that I'm doing that are affecting me physically, or the way that you carry yourself. Maybe you realize that, somebody with Sagittarius rising, you might be a very extroverted person, but you're too extroverted. Maybe you're not spending enough time just kind of like coming into a situation, because the rising sign can be your interactions with other people, but coming into a situation and how they are perceiving it, I should say. And just like allowing yourself to just be. I'm treating Sagittarius like it's Leo, like a person that deliberately calls attention to themselves. And I don't mean it in a narcissistic way, but sometimes people do these kinds of things for a variety of reasons. Maybe they just like being sociable, but it tends to keep them on the surface, because they're not really, they might be making small talk when they could be taking in their environment and really like being here now in certain circumstances. Some people, they feel the compulsion to kind of talk, and that's really where I'm going with that. Or maybe it's a situation where you're always feeling like you want to escape. And I mean, not like Pisces, like escape pain or anything like that, but want to escape physically. Like you always want to travel, but you never lay down roots, and you're kind of like a nomad. And maybe this goes back to your childhood, when you had certain things happen that were similar to this, where you had to move and you had to make new friends, but you never really got the chance to stay in any one place. People in children of military service men or whatever, or people, things like that. And that might have made you kind of like keep at arm's length with people. And you still do that to this day, but you really want to settle down. So that might be a way for you to realize that. But at every full moon, the sun is opposing it. So the sun is in that 7th house of relationships. And it could be that you realize that you have to stop doing something to keep a relationship strong. Maybe, again, being afraid of intimacy. And I'm talking mainly of emotional intimacy, where you tend to be kind of like superficial about things. And maybe you tend to get bored with your environment pretty quickly and you want to move somewhere else. And that has made it hard for you to actually keep a relationship or even to establish one. So anyway, this could be like very enlightening, illuminating for yourself, being that it's in Sagittarius. You could be ending a chapter in your life. On the 17th, Mars goes into Virgo. Virgo is the 10th house for Sag. So this can be, I think this is actually a very good transit. There can be the danger sometimes of clashing with authority figures. 10th house can be authority figures. And so that could create a bit of tension or conflict with people who are over you in terms of their, in terms of the pecking order. But this makes you very ambitious career-wise, and I think you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. And actually, the month of June is a great time to initiate projects. And, we've been chomping at the bit to kind of move forward because we've been in a morass of this, well, not necessarily the eclipse energy, but the retrogrades. And Mars has been severely detained. I mean, it didn't even go into Leo until late last fall, probably November, maybe even October. I don't remember. So suffice it to say, it hasn't been in Virgo for a long time in this particular domain for you. So you might be feeling like, yeah, I'm going to definitely push forward with this. On the 20th, the sun goes into Cancer. This is the summer solstice. And this is a time when the sun goes into a cardinal sign. So just for the collective, there might be a lot going on. Like it just seems like we have like one thing after the other. But it's not, I don't think it's going to feel that bad because we've had so many delays that it might be a relief in certain cases. But again, this is your 8th house. And then on the 25th, we have a new moon at 4 degrees of Cancer. This is the phoenix rising from the ashes. 8th house is rebirth. And so that can be very good for you in terms of your ability to reinvent yourself, but not in a superficial type of way, in a very deep sort of way. Because maybe you have been facing your shadow. With Jupiter in Cancer, the shadow work can be very productive because you're going to have a lot of positivity from Jupiter in this sector, which can be very heavy energy. And this will put it in the best light, which is the philosophical perspective. Here's an example of that. Let's say, you realize you're dealing with one of your parents and you realize that they have always negated your passions in life in one way or the other. And, it's easy to get resentful and even downright angry about that and say, oh, and I'm not saying that that isn't destructive, because it probably has been going on, since you were young. Now that you're an adult, you have the freedom to make the choices, but back then you didn't have that. So it's a little bit more problematic when, you're dealing with that sort of situation. And, if you can, Jupiter is about expansion, and it's about the bigger picture. If you can kind of like look at that parent, even if they've been deliberately trying to thwart you, and say, why would they be doing that? Well, you know what? They didn't have that kind of opportunity that I did. They were in a different place. So maybe they do feel a bit envious that I'm pursuing my dreams and they felt like they couldn't do it, or maybe they never had the guts to do it, or even the consciousness to think that they could possibly do something that really speaks to themselves. Maybe they were just going along with the program. Doesn't really matter, but we can have compassion for that. That doesn't, there's probably other things that are wrong too. And I'm not saying that anyone has to tolerate that, but we can at least have compassion. And that can really cut through a lot of those heavy emotions that deal with the eighth house. Because sometimes people have buried rage, and especially signs like, Sagittarius and Libra, that are really like, they try to be very positive and friendly and things like that. And, that can be spiritual or psychological bypassing if the person feels guilty about acknowledging that they're very angry, or maybe they're just totally out of touch with their anger. So this can actually have a very healing effect on you. Anything new that you do that has the theme of regeneration, either psychologically or some kind of spiritual practice. The eighth house I associate more, spiritually with like shamanic healing, paganism, but, astrology and the tarot is connected to this. They call it the occult. So these kinds of things can be where you're at and what you are putting attention on. And you may find that you make a lot of headway and you have a lot of, opportunities come your way with Jupiter also here. By the way, Jupiter will be in conjunction with this new moon. So that gives it a greater amount of favorable energy, or if you want to call it luck, attached to it. So any new endeavors that you seek to accomplish at this time might really take root. And so that's happening. And then we have the very next day, Mercury going into Leo. Leo for Sagittarius is the ninth house, and Mercury can be writing, and the ninth house can be publishing. So there might be something, and this is right after that new moon in the eighth house. So there might be, I don't know if there's some connection there, but sometimes people write about the things that are like kind of their dark side, or their side. And it's amazing the kind of powerful material that can come from kind of getting that out, or a memoir, something like that. Also, another thing too is the ninth house can be long distance travel, and Mercury can be learning, or maybe it could be teaching. So maybe you get some kind of opportunity to do either one of those things. So that's pretty eventful, Sag. I hope you're looking forward to it like I am. And yeah, if you'd like a private reading, I have all kinds of astrological readings. I also do the tarot. You can find out more information at the link below. Thanks for listening. Bye.